Welcome back to the deep dive.
Yes.
If you just close your eyes right now and picture Breaking Bad, what do you see?
Oh, I mean, probably the rusty RV, right?
Right, the RV.
Yeah, the endless New Mexico desert, that really harsh, yellow sunlight.
Yeah, or maybe even like a pair of tidy whities flying through the air.
Yeah.
You really think of this gritty, local, almost Western-style crime drama.
Definitely. It's the quintessential image of the American Southwest underworld. It feels, very contained, dusty.
But today, we are completely shattering that containment. We're pulling a file that really recontextualizes the entire scope of the series. We are looking at the second episode of the 5th season, the one titled Madrigal.
And we really aren't in Kansas anymore with this one.
No, we are not, or Albuquerque for that matter, because we start off in this sterile, high-tech corporate test kitchen in Hanover, Germany.
It is a massive pivot for the show. I mean, we are moving from the immediate explosive adrenaline of the season premiere.
Right, where they were using those giant magnets to destroy the evidence room.
Exactly. We go from that chaos to this geopolitical and logistical hangover. Madrigal is all about the shockwaves.
Yeah, it's about how the death of a drug lord in a nursing home in the United States causes a literal corporate executive to panic across the Atlantic Ocean.
We really have a tremendous amount of ground to cover today.
We do. We are going to dissect the introduction of the nervous wreck that is Lydia Rodarte-Quayle. We're going to analyze the shifting power dynamics of our central trio, Walt, Jesse, and Mike. And we're going to unpack the real mission of this deep dive.
Which is redefining the battlefield. The show transforms here from a local crime drama into a corporate thriller.
100%. And we have sources today ranging from Vince Gilligan's own production notes to some deep-cut interviews with the cast, plus these really sharp critical essays from Vulture and Entertainment Weekly.
And those essays highlight a central theme for this hour, which is interdependence.
Interdependence, that is the buzzword for us today. The idea that the lone wolf myth is just dead.
Completely dead.
Everyone, no matter how powerful or how isolated they think they are, is tied to someone else's mistake. Or someone else's greed.
Or someone else's conscience. And we are going to see that play out in some really tragic ways, especially for Mike Ehrmantraut.
Oh, man, poor Mike.
We're going to get deep into his head. And specifically, we're going to break down one of the most famous monologues in the entire series.
The time bomb speech.
The time bomb speech, yes.
I cannot wait to get to the time bomb. But let's start at the very top. The title itself, Madrigal. Before this episode, what did we actually know about Madrigal Electromotive?
Honestly, very little. It was basically just a name on a piece of paper.
Right.
We knew Los Pollos Hermanos had a parent company, obviously. And we knew Gus Fring wasn't funding a massive underground super lab with just, fried chicken sales.
Yeah, that math doesn't check out.
Right. But it was abstract. It was just a shell company logo lurking in the background.
But this episode makes it physical, flesh and blood. And it does so with a cold open that I just recall being incredibly jarring when it first aired.
Oh, absolutely.
You tune in, you're expecting to see Walt celebrating his victory, and instead you get
dipping sauces.
Dipping sauces.
It's a brilliant piece of disorientation. The scene opens in the offices of Madrigal Electromotive GmbH in Germany.
And it's not even a normal office. It's a food science lab.
Yeah, it's stark white, blue tints, all stainless steel. Visually, it is the polar opposite of the warm, yellow, gritty texture of Albuquerque that we're so used to.
And we are introduced to Peter Schuler. He's the head of the fast food division.
And he's just standing there in a lab coat, looking absolutely miserable, tasting nuggets and sauces.
The banality of it is the whole point.
Yeah.
I mean, here is a man who helped facilitate a multi-million-dollar international methamphetamine empire.
A man who associated with cartel butchers.
Yes. And his day job is deciding between honey mustard and French.
French.
Cajun kick, French dressing.
French. It really highlights the business side of the drug trade, that these aren't street thugs. These are corporate titans in suits, or lab coats in this case.
But if you watch Schuler's face during this, he isn't thinking about the sauce. He is staring out into the middle distance.
The silence in that scene is so heavy.
It really is. And then the silence breaks when his secretary enters. And I just love the detail that he doesn't even speak to her.
No, he just looks.
He just looks at her, and she tells him the police are there.
And not just one local cop. We're talking 3 distinct groups of law enforcement. The walls are completely closing in on him.
Now, this is where that theme of interdependence hits hard. Schuler knows Gus Fring is dead.
He has to know.
He likely knows the laptop evidence was seized, or at least that the investigation is incredibly active. The ripples from Albuquerque have officially reached Germany.
And most white-collar criminals in this situation, they'd call a lawyer, they'd start shredding documents, right? Or looking for a plea deal.
Yeah, standard corporate cover-up playbook.
Yeah.
But Schuler does none of that. He makes this split-second decision that confirms just how deep the rot goes.
He just walks right past the police in the lobby, goes into the bathroom, and he grabs a portable defibrillator off the wall.
The AED unit. It is such a specific and honestly gruesome choice of weapon.
It's desperate, and it's immediate. He attaches the pads to his own chest, goes into the restroom stall, and electrocutes himself before the police can even knock on the door.
It's this shocking moment of violence in a very quiet, very sterile room. But, why do you think the writers chose this specific method?
Rather than a gun or pills.
Yeah.
Well, I think it emphasizes the corporate setting. There are no guns just lying around in a high-tech German food lab. He had to use the tools of his environment.
That makes sense.
But narratively, it functions as a confirmation of scale. If a high-level executive is willing to die immediately rather than face a single question from police, it tells you something crucial.
That the connection between Madrigal and Gus Fring wasn't just some rogue franchise owner doing things off the books.
Exactly. This went to the very top.
It completely sets the stakes for the whole season. The danger isn't the cartel anymore. The danger is this massive, terrified corporate beast.
Vince Gilligan actually discussed this in the production notes. He posed the question of whether the whole company was corrupt or just a few executives.
And they leave it pretty ambiguous.
Intentionally so. But Schuler's sheer panic suggests he was one of the few who really knew the full extent, the dark braided cord of the operation, as some critics called it.
And he took that secret to the grave. Maybe to protect his legacy, or maybe just to escape the sheer humiliation of it all.
There is a really fascinating piece of casting trivia regarding Peter Schuler, by the way.
Oh, lay it on me.
The production team had a very specific vibe they wanted for this character. They actually tried to get the legendary film director, Werner Herzog, for the role.
Werner Herzog, are you serious? That would have been absolutely incredible.
Right. Just think about Herzog's voice, that existential, grim narration he does for all his documentaries.
I'm staring at the tater tot, and the tater tot is staring back into the abyss.
Precisely. They couldn't make the schedule work, unfortunately.
It's a shame.
Yeah, so they cast Norbert Weiser, who is a fantastic character actor, and did a wonderful job conveying that silent, crushing dread.
You really did.
But you can still feel the ghost of that Herzog casting idea in the direction. The whole scene feels like a European art film. Cold, detached, grim.
So the German connection is basically severed. Schuler is dead. The money tap from overseas is potentially turned off for good.
Which means we have to fly back to New Mexico.
Right. The king, meaning Gus, is dead. But his castle is an absolute mess. And we find Jesse Pinkman in a state of frantic, terrified panic.
This brings us to the cleanup phase of the episode. But unlike the previous episode where they were physically cleaning up a laptop with magnets, this is psychological cleanup.
And it revolves entirely around one tiny, terrifying little object. The ricin cigarette.
We probably need to rewind just a second for context here, because this cigarette has been a major plot point for a whole season.
Yeah, it's the ultimate Chekhov's gun of season 4. Walt made the ricin. He gave it to Jesse to kill Gus.
But in the season 4 finale, Walt needed to turn Jesse against Gus to save his own skin.
So he convinced Jesse that Gus had stolen the cigarette to poison Brock, the young son of Jesse's girlfriend.
Which was a lie, a massive, truly evil lie. Walt had the cigarette the whole time.
Walt poisoned Brock with Lily of the Valley, a completely common plan, just to simulate the sickness and manipulate Jesse.
And now that the dust has settled, the ricin cigarette is still missing from Jesse's pack. And Jesse is terrified because he thinks he just lost a lethal bioweapon out in the wild somewhere.
He genuinely thinks some random kid is going to pick it up and die. His guilt complex is just running at redline.
And watching Walt operate in this segment is chilling, truly chilling.
Because he sees Jesse's panic not as a problem to be solved, but as a lever to be pulled. He decides to, quote-unquote, help Jesse find it.
It is a masterclass in gaslighting. Walt constructs this incredibly elaborate con. He creates a dummy cigarette. He fills a little glass vial with salt.
And then he hides the real ricin, the actual lethal poison, behind an electrical outlet in his own bedroom.
That hiding spot, behind the outlet plate, it's becoming totally iconic for Walt.
It is. It's domestic. It's hidden in plain sight, and it's literally right there on the walls of his family home.
It perfectly symbolizes how the danger is literally embedded in the foundation of his life now.
But the search scene itself is where the dark comedy really comes in. Walt goes over and helps Jesse tear his house apart looking for it.
Yeah.
And what does he use to plant the fake?
The Roomba.
The Roomba.
Yeah.
The robot vacuum.
It's such an absurd image. You have these two high-level drug manufacturers, one of whom is a literal genius chemist, on their hands and knees chasing a robot vacuum cleaner around the living room.
It really grounds the high stakes in this weird, mundane, suburban reality.
But the tragedy of the scene lands hard when Jesse actually opens it and finds the fake.
It is heart-wrenching. Aaron Paul is just so incredibly good at playing raw vulnerability.
When Jesse opens the vacuum and sees that cigarette, he doesn't feel relief. He feels immense shame.
He just collapses. He starts crying. He looks at Walt, the man who actually poisoned the child, the man who has been manipulating him for months, and he apologizes to him.
He says, "I didn't know what I was doing. I'm so sorry I suspected you."
He is apologizing to his abuser. And look at Walt's reaction in that moment.
Right. He doesn't look guilty, and he doesn't look like a guy who's just gotten away with a massive lie.
No, he looks completely benevolent. He pats Jesse on the back. He comforts him. He says, "It's okay."
This moment cements the entire power dynamic for Season 5. Jesse is no longer the junior partner who questions Walt's decisions. He is now the broken, loyal disciple.
Walt has successfully weaponized Jesse's own conscience against him.
It ensures total loyalty. Jesse now feels he owes Walt a huge debt for ever doubting him. It's emotional blackmail of the absolute highest order.
Walt isn't just a meth cook anymore. He's become a full-blown psychological predator.
So Walt has his chemistry skills, and he has the unwavering loyalty of his partner. But to rebuild the empire, and let's be totally clear, that is exactly what Walt wants to do, they are missing the third leg of the stool.
They have no distribution, they have no muscle, they have zero connections left.
Which means they need Mike Ehrmantraut.
And Mike is not an easy sell. In fact, he might be the hardest sell in the world right now.
This segment is arguably the dramatic heart of the episode. Walt and Jesse drive out to meet Mike to propose a brand new partnership, a three-way split.
And Mike's answer is instantaneous. It's a hard, flat no.
He doesn't even pause to consider the money. Mike is trying to get out. He wants to be a grandfather. He wants to sit on a park bench and feed the birds.
But beyond just wanting to retire, he has a very specific read on Walter White. And this is where we get the famous time bomb speech.
It's such an incredible assessment of character. I want to dig into the specific wording here because Mike doesn't just say, I don't like you.
No, he diagnoses Walt.
He really does. He looks him dead in the eye and says, "You are trouble. I'm sorry the kid here doesn't see it, but I sure as hell do. You are a time bomb. Tick, tick, tick. And I have no intention of being around for the boom."
Tick, tick, tick. Mike sees right through the Heisenberg fedora. He sees the ego underneath.
Mike values two things above all else: order and professionalism.
Which is why he worked for Gus Fring for so many years.
Exactly. Gus was a machine. Gus was predictable. Walt is chaos. Walt is pure ego. Mike recognizes that Walt creates complete disaster wherever he goes.
He sees Walt not as some brilliant kingpin, but as a dangerous, arrogant amateur who just happens to have a chemistry degree.
So Mike walks away. He is completely done. But the episode is titled Madrigal, and as we established earlier, the theme is interdependence.
Right.
Mike can't just walk away. The system won't let him.
This brings us to the squeeze, and it comes directly from the DEA.
We see Hank Schrader and Steve Gomez really tightening the net in this episode. Hank isn't just looking for a meth lab in the desert anymore. He's following the corporate money.
There is that scene where Hank meets with the Madrigal CEO Schuler's boss, a guy named Herr Herzog. Ironically enough, given the casting story you told earlier.
Right. And the CEO is in full-blown damage control mode. He throws Schuler completely under the bus, calls him a lone criminal.
And then he offers full cooperation to the DEA to save the company's stock price.
And that corporate cooperation is the knife in Mike's back. Because when a massive conglomerate opens its books to the federal government, they find the offshore accounts.
The Cayman Islands accounts.
Exactly. And we have to remember why Mike was doing this in the first place. He wasn't out buying sports cars or mansions.
No, he lives in a very modest house. He drinks cheap beer and watches old movies.
He was doing all of this for Kaylee, his granddaughter.
They actually show the account on screen during the DEA scene, and it was substantial.
$2 million. It was just sitting there waiting for her 18th birthday. A total nest egg. Security for her future.
And in one scene, with a few keystrokes by the authorities, it's gone. Just completely seized.
That moment is devastating. We cut to Mike watching Kaylee play in the yard, and he just looks so incredibly tired.
Matt Richenthal from TV Fanatic pointed this out in his review. He called Jonathan Banks' performance a portrait of an exasperated career criminal.
That's a perfect description.
Mike excelled at the game. He did everything right by criminal standards. He kept his head down, and he still lost everything.
And here is the great irony of this episode, and arguably of the entire 5th season.
The DEA's success is what actually creates the new danger.
Precisely. If the DEA fails to find that money, Mike stays retired.
He feeds his chickens, he feeds the birds, he stays out of it.
Exactly. If the DEA doesn't seize that $2 million, Mike never picks up the phone. He never joins Walt. The new meth operation never gets the connections or the distribution network it needs to get off the ground.
In a very real way, the good guy action of seizing the cartel assets forces the bad guy back into the corner, where violence is his only option.
It creates a massive vacuum. And Mike, desperate to refill that account for Kaylee before he dies, has to step right back into the muck.
But even broke, Mike still has a code. And that code gets tested almost immediately by the introduction of a brand new player. Enter Lydia Rodarte-Quayle.
Oh, Lydia, played so wonderfully by Laura Frazier.
This is her debut in the series. She meets Mike at a diner in Houston. And the visual contrast between these two sitting in a booth is just comedy gold.
It's perfect character work. Mike is sitting there like a stone statue. He's eating his food, totally calm, totally grounded.
And Lydia is practically vibrating.
She's wearing these giant sunglasses inside the diner. She's constantly looking over her shoulder. She's whispering intensely.
Mike, he is the absolute embodiment of white-collar panic. She is a corporate executive who is used to spreadsheets and boardrooms, not hitmen and diners.
But she thinks she knows how this underworld game is played.
She certainly thinks she does. She slides this list across the table to him. It's a list of 11 men.
All former employees of Gus Fring's operation. The laundry manager, the chemical supplier, the security guys.
The loose ends.
And they are all currently in custody or being actively questioned by the DEA. And Lydia wants them cut.
She wants Mike to kill all 11 of them.
She is completely convinced that any day now, one of them is going to cut a plea deal and implicate her.
And Mike's reaction is just flat out refuse. But not just because he doesn't want to kill people. He refuses on principle.
He fiercely defends the professionalism of his crew. He explains to her that Gus paid these men hazard pay. They were very well compensated for their silence.
To Mike, the idea of killing your own men to cover your tracks is amateurish, it's panicked, it's just bad business.
He tells Lydia to calm down, take a deep breath, and go back home to her spreadsheets.
He assumes rationality will prevail, but Lydia isn't rational right now. She's terrified, and fear makes people do really stupid things.
Which leads to a sequence that feels ripped right out of a classic 1940s noir film.
The betrayal.
Mike gets a phone call from Dwayne Chow. Fans will definitely remember Chow. He was the chemical supplier from the previous seasons.
And Chow sounds terrified on the phone. He asks Mike to come over to his house.
And Mike, being the seasoned veteran he is, smells a rat immediately. The tone of Chow's voice is just off.
So he drives to Chow's house, but he doesn't just walk up and knock on the front door.
No, he circles back, he observes the house from a distance, he spots the setup, and he sneaks in through the back.
And inside, he finds one of his own guys, Chris Mara, waiting to ambush him.
Chris Mara, who is on Lydia's list, he was one of the exact guys Mike just offended to Lydia at the diner.
That's the real heartbreak of it.
Okay.
Chris has already killed Chow. He's standing there holding a gun on the door, just waiting for Mike to walk through.
But Mike gets the drop on him, again, showing that Mike is just on a completely different level in terms of tactical skill compared to these younger guys.
And then they have this conversation.
It's a very quiet, sad conversation before the gunshot. Chris admits everything. He says, "I need the money, Mike. She offered me $10,000 ahead."
It's the exact same motivation. The DEA seized Chris's hazard pay too.
He's broke. His safety net is gone. Lydia offered him a lifeline, and he took it.
It really proves that the solid guys Mike defended weren't loyal to some grand criminal code. They were loyal to the paycheck.
Once the paycheck vanished, the loyalty just evaporated.
So Mike kills Chris. He has to. He takes him out. And now the so-called moral center of the criminal world is back to killing his own friends.
And he knows exactly who is responsible for putting him in this position. Lydia. She tried to have him killed. She broke the rules of the game.
So he drives straight to her house to finish it.
This scene inside Lydia's house is visually masterful. It's dark. It's almost gothic in how it's lit. The shadows are long.
Mike breaks in, just terrifyingly efficient. He finds Lydia asleep in her bedroom. He wakes her up. He has his silencer ready. He is fully prepared to execute her right there.
And Lydia, she knows she's dead. She doesn't scream or try to run, but she makes a very specific, very strange request of him.
She pleads with him about her daughter.
She doesn't say, please don't kill me. She says, please don't leave my body here in the house.
She wants to disappear.
She wants Mike to dispose of her body so that her daughter thinks she just abandoned her. She cannot bear the thought of her young child waking up and finding her mother's corpse with a bullet in her head.
She would literally rather her daughter hate her for the rest of her life for leaving than be permanently traumatized by the violence of finding her murdered.
That is a very grim, very twisted kind of motherly love. But it lands with Mike.
It hits the one single soft spot he has left. He's a grandfather. He lives for Quayle.
He completely understands that protective instinct, the desperate need to shield the child from the horror of the business, and so he hesitates.
And in that brief hesitation, the gears start turning in his head. A deal is struck.
Necessity breeds invention. Mike realizes that pulling the trigger solves the immediate threat of Lydia, but it does absolutely nothing to fix his financial issue. He is still flat broke.
But Lydia has access. She runs the logistics at Madrigal. She can get them the one thing they desperately need, methylamine.
That's the golden ticket for Walt's new operation. Walt and Jesse have the mobile lab plan all figured out, using the Vamanos pest control cover, but they don't have the precursor chemical to actually cook.
Lydia is the tap.
So Mike makes the call. He takes his phone out, calls Walt, and utters the words that ultimately seal his fate. He says, I've reconsidered.
He's in. Not because he likes Walt, not because he wants to cook meth or build an empire.
No, strictly because he has to earn back that $2 million for Quayle, and leveraging Lydia is the only way to get the chemicals to do it.
It is such a tragic loop. He willingly enters into a partnership with the time bomb, all because he's trying to defuse the financial bomb going off in his own life.
So the band is officially back together. Walt, Jesse, Mike, and their very nervous, very volatile new supplier, Lydia.
It's a powder keg, just waiting for a match.
Now, we really have to talk about Walt's motivation in all of this. Mike is in it for the money he lost to the feds. Jesse is in it because he's being emotionally manipulated. But Walt...
Saul Goodman actually brings this exact point up in a great scene. He tells Walt, look, you won. Gus is dead. You beat the cartel, take your chips off the table and retire.
It's the most logical advice in the world. Saul is practically begging him to stop while he's ahead.
But Walt counters with this financial reality check. He reveals to Saul that he is technically broke.
Which just sounds insane to the listener. He was making millions working for Gus. Where did it all go?
Well, Walt breaks it down for him. The overhead for keeping everyone quiet was astronomical. But specifically, Schuyler gave $600,000 of their cash to Ted Beneke to pay off the IRS so they could avoid a tax audit.
Plus, they paid tens of thousands out of pocket for Hank's physical therapy. The best doctors, the best equipment.
They bought the car wash outright to launder the money. Walt tells Saul that when you add it all up, he is actually $40,000 in the hole.
So he uses that debt as his grand justification. He says, I have to cook just to get back to zero.
But that's a lie, isn't it?
It's the lie he tells himself, and it's the lie he tells Saul. But if you look at the subtext of the writing, and if you listen to what Vince Gilligan has said about this specific era of Walt's character arc, it's not about the $40,000.
Not at all. It's about the golden opportunity.
The empire business.
Exactly. Walt looks out at the landscape. No Gus Fring. No cartel. He sees a wide-open market with a massive demand for his blue meth product.
He sees an empire just sitting there for the taking. The debt is just a convenient, rational-sounding excuse to keep going.
The drive behind it is pure, unadulterated ego. He wants to be the king.
And watching the king try to operate at home is, well, it's deeply disturbing. The domestic scenes in the White household in this episode are playing out like a psychological horror movie.
It is suffocating to watch. Walt is trying to force this bizarre return to normalcy.
He's unpacking groceries in the kitchen, he's making dinner, he's chirping away about his day. He is acting like the last 4 seasons of blood and violence just didn't happen.
And Schuyler is having absolutely none of it.
She is basically catatonic. She just stays in bed, hiding under the covers. She is terrified of her own husband.
She knows he killed Gus. She knows he built a pipe bomb and blew up a nursing home to do it.
There is this scene at the very end where Walt climbs into bed with her and starts kissing her shoulder, making these very deliberate, unreciprocated sexual advances.
And she just lies there, completely motionless, staring at the wall.
It is horrifying. She is essentially a hostage in her own marriage.
It really highlights the depths of Walt's total delusion at this point. He genuinely thinks he can be a ruthless, murdering drug lord during the day and a loving, normal, suburban husband at night.
He thinks he can neatly compartmentalize the two halves of his life. But Skylar knows the truth. She knows she is sleeping next to a monster.
Ken Tucker from Entertainment Weekly noted that ending the episode in that bedroom with that oppressive, heavy silence was a really bold choice by the director.
It was. A typical crime show would end with Mike's phone call. That plot ending the whole "we're back in business" cliffhanger.
But Breaking Bad ends with Skylar trapped in the dark with Heisenberg. It emphasizes the personal cost of his ambition. The rot hasn't just infected the business, it has come home.
And speaking of the home environment, there is a very specific movie reference playing on the TV in the background of this episode that we have to mention. The Caine Mutiny.
Oh, good catch. The classic Bogart film.
It's definitely not an accidental choice by the set decorators. Vince Gilligan has cited it as one of his favorite movies of all time.
And it fits the themes perfectly. It's about a Navy ship, Captain Queeg, who slowly descends into this intense paranoia and madness.
And he eventually causes a mutiny among his own crew because of his erratic, authoritarian behavior.
Very subtle, Vince. Very subtle.
It's a direct, brilliant mirror to Walt's arc. He sees himself as the undisputed captain now. He finally has his own ship.
But he is already paranoid. He is obsessed with his own authority.
And the mutiny, whether it's eventually going to come from Mike or from Jesse, is always bubbling just under the surface. It heavily foreshadows the conflict that will tear this new three-way partnership apart.
Plus, on a purely practical production level, The Caine Mutiny is a Sony movie, and Breaking Bad is a Sony television production, so the clip rights were probably free.
Synergy. Efficiency meets artistry.
I do want to pivot to the production side for a moment, actually. We've talked a lot about the writing and the acting, but the direction in this hour is just stellar. Michelle MacLaren directed this episode.
Michelle MacLaren is an absolute powerhouse director. She handled some of the most action-heavy and tension-filled episodes of the entire series.
Episodes like 1 Minute with the parking lot shootout, and later to Haji Lee.
Matt Zollerseitz from Vulture wrote a great piece where he compared her directorial work in Madrigal to Alan J. Pakula's thrillers from the 1970s.
Movies like The Parallax View or All the President's Men.
Exactly. It's that pervasive sense of paranoia, right? The feeling that the characters are always being watched by some larger, unseen force.
The incredible use of shadows. The wide, clinical shots in the German office that make the humans look like tiny ants trapped in a massive machine.
And the way she shoots Lydia's house during the break-in with all those dark corners and harsh slats of light cutting through the blinds. Seitz said there wasn't a single dull shot in the entire episode.
It elevates the script from a standard crime procedural to something far more cinematic and atmospheric.
And we really can't ignore the realism they tried to build with the Madrigal Corporation itself. They didn't just casually mention the parent company. They built out an entire corporate portfolio.
They really did. If you look closely at the documents Hank is reviewing, or the wall art in the German office, the art department created distinct logos and branding for all these fake subsidiaries under the Madrigal umbrella.
Los Pollos Hermanos was just one tiny piece of the pie. They had Whisker Stays cat food. They had industrial air filter companies.
And one of them, Burgermatic, was actually a really fun Easter egg for the diehards.
Yes. Burgermatic was the name of a fictional fast food restaurant in a script Vince Gilligan wrote years and years ago for a movie called Home Fries.
I love that they recycle their own universe like that. It just adds a fun layer of depth for the superfans pausing their screens.
So let's look at the overall reception. The episode aired in July 2012. People were incredibly hyped after the magnet stunt in the premiere. What was the verdict?
The live ratings actually saw a slight dip. It drew 2.29 million viewers, which was down from nearly 3 million for the season premiere.
But that is pretty common for a second episode of a season, right? The premiere always gets that massive event status bump.
Exactly. The critical reception, however, was incredibly strong across the board.
People really dug the sudden corporate thriller vibe.
They did. That interdependence theme we talked about really resonated with reviewers. Critics liked seeing the scope of the universe expand beyond the local cartel politics.
The Ringer later did a massive ranking of the series, and they placed this episode 37th out of the 62 total episodes.
Which, sounds a bit low, middle of the pack. But in a prestige show like Breaking Bad, Even the 37th best episode is better than most television shows' series finales.
That is very true. It's fundamentally a setter episode. It's moving vital chess pieces around the board.
It doesn't have the flashy, exploding nursing home face-off or a giant magnet.
But it does all the heavy dramatic lifting required to set up the architecture of Season 5. You literally cannot have the great train heist later on or the iconic Say My Name moment without establishing Lydia and the Madrigal supply chain right here.
So we've unpacked a lot today. The dipping sauces, the Roomba, the time bomb speech, the hit list. If we boil all this down, what are we really walking away with? What are the big pillars of Madrigal?
I see three main pillars that support the rest of the season. First is manipulation. Walt has successfully rehooked Jesse using the immense guilt of the ricin cigarette. He has fully weaponized Jesse's conscience to ensure his absolute loyalty moving forward.
Second pillar.
Coercion. Mike Ehrmantraut didn't break bad again because he wanted the thrill of it. He was forced back into the game by the state. The seizure of his assets backed him into a desperate corner where violence was the only liquidity he had left. The system inadvertently created the monster it was trying to fight.
And the third.
Expansion. The scope of the show has fundamentally changed forever. We aren't just out in the desert cooking in an RV anymore. We are dealing with multinational corporate complicity. The new villains are wearing tailored suits and working in glass offices in Germany. The Empire business now has global stakeholders.
It sets the stage for the absolute peak of Heisenberg perfectly. The main obstacles aren't violent rival gangs anymore. The obstacles are logistics, supply chain management, and legacy.
And as always with Walt, the insurmountable internal obstacles of unchecked ego and bottomless greed.
So here is a final thought to chew on as we wrap things up today. We talked earlier about the tragic irony of the DEA's actions. Think about Mike's code for a second. He flatly refused to kill those 11 men for Lydia because he wanted to do things the right way.
He wanted to honor the agreement of the hazard pay. He wanted to be an honorable thief.
But because the DEA aggressively seized the hazard pay accounts, those men ended up dying anyway. They were killed by Chris, or eventually by Mike and Walt's crew later in the season to tie up the loose ends.
It's a deeply disturbing paradox.
Did the DEA's financial seizure actually cause more death than it prevented? If they just leave the offshore money alone, Mike stays retired. The list of 11 men stays alive in prison. And Walt has no viable distribution network to restart his cooks.
In a weird way, the actions of the good guys created the exact power vacuum that Heisenberg needed to fill.
It certainly suggests that in the Breaking Bad universe, every action, even a perfectly legal, justified one, has a massive reaction that usually ends with someone in a body bag.
A cheery thought for a cheery show.
But that is exactly why we love it. The moral complexity is just unmatched. Thank you for listening to this deep dive into Madrigal. We hope you enjoyed exploring the corporate side of the cartel with us. We will catch you on the next one.